Okay, so we're just waiting for the last moments where people are coming in from the waiting room before we start. Very warm welcome to everybody here tonight. Okay, so we've got everybody in. I know Andy here is going to be letting some latecomers in as and when they arrive. But good evening to everybody. Thank you very much for attending this event tonight, which is of course entitled Health and Safety in the Financial World by Tim Eldridge, who's Global Head of Health and Safety in a large financial organisation, and of course is IOSH Vice President. So thank you very much in advance, Tim, for coming and supporting us and giving over your time in a very busy world at the minute. Let me just introduce myself. My name's Chris Ely. I am the present chair of IOSH Staffordshire branch, and again, I'm very happy and very excited to warmly welcome you to this event this evening. Just a reiteration of how these events happen, really, and a little bit of background just before we continue. We at IOSH Staffordshire branch are proud to produce professional, relevant, engaging and thought-provoking events for our members, and this is certainly one of those again. We exist to support our members, the profession and the wider world of health and safety, and this work forms part of the three pillars of IOSH Work 2022. That is to influence, enhance and collaborate across the industry. Of course, part of IOSH's 5-year strategy to shape the future of health and safety. This event is born from three parts. That is the requirement to deliver events related to IOSH Work 2022. From the requests from branch members left on our event feedback forms, very, very important that we respond to what members would like to see. And of course, the general need for topical, interesting and engaging subjects. So of course, we've got Tim tonight who's going to be presenting to us. So, okay, let's just go back to my screen. Okay, screen function. Okay, sorry, my screen disappeared on me then. So, good evening, everybody. As I say, tonight is full of amazing people, not to mention the delegates, the presenters tonight, and we're very privileged to have tonight, as I've mentioned, Tim Eldridge, who's going to be our main speaker in health and safety in the financial world, global health and safety head of a large financial organisation, and IOSH Vice President. But I particularly like to hand over to Jonathan Hughes, Chartered Fellow, and also Global Health and Safety and BMS at Turner and Townsend. He's the Global Health and Safety and BMS lead at Turner and Townsend, I should say. So I'm going to hand over at this moment to John. John is going to be helping and leading Tim in his presentation tonight. And we are looking forward to, when we can, also have Jimmy Quinn, of course, the president of IOSH, who I believe is in between trains at the minute, but is going to be here any moment soon. So with that afoot, we look forward to hearing from John, from Tim, and from Jimmy. So to John, thank you very much, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, everybody. Thanks ever so much for joining the IOSH Staffordshire branch event this evening. Before we introduce Tim and talk through health and safety in the financial world, I can see we've got Jimmy has just joined us. So without further ado, if it's okay with you, Jimmy, I can see you're on a train, so all the usual caveats around signals dropping out, etc. But ladies and gentlemen, I'll just hand over to Jimmy Quinn. It says Tim Eldridge on his title, but I can assure you that is definitely Jimmy Quinn, our president. And I'm sure Jimmy's got a few words for us to welcome everybody this evening. So Jimmy, over to you, sir.
Thanks very much, John. Lovely to see you, mate. That was me clicking on the wrong link as I was running to catch the other train. So I'll change that now. But yeah, hi everyone. Hope you can all see me well. I have permission, because there's no one else in the carriage from the train guard, that I can do this call without my face covering on for the next sort of 5-10 minutes, and then I'll cover up. Just a quick note to come in and just tell you what we've been up to in terms of the presidency. Presidency's going well, I think. If anybody has any feedback that they think it's not going well in terms of me and the presidential team getting out there and trying to meet you all, then please feed that back through Chris or contact me directly, james.quinn@iosh.com. I'm hoping that you can all see a visible presence of the presidential team That was the plan at the start of this, and I'm really glad to be here. It's really important for me to come to these branch meetings, and if it's okay with you, Chair, you know, I will pop in from time to time anyway. No need for the invite, and hopefully I'll be welcomed with some open arms, and I know we will. I know I will, Chris. Lovely what you're doing with the branch as well, to you and your executive committee. So that's the one reason why I'm here, to show you that I am around, to show you that I do want to reach out, to show you that I do want to listen, and invite you all to my membership chats that I'm doing on every week now. Coffee, up to 25 people each week can come and have a chat with some council members and presidential team. We're doing some great things as My Hat with Council. We've got a veterans representation, a veterans group set up. We've also got that LinkedIn page now as well. We've got over 300 already without any pushing out by IOSH comms. And we're hoping to get, you know, that into 4 figures. I haven't seen your name yet, Chris Healy. You're probably in there. You probably haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure you probably
under a different name like you, Jim.
All right, thanks, mate. But it's really good for our veterans as well, which is absolutely fantastic. And we're doing some great stuff with mental health as well. We've got a focus group on that. So we've got Matt Jackson looking after the veterans, and we've got Keith Hall looking after the mental health part. And of course, we've got our presidential team out and about everywhere. Not just at this branch, but every branch, 1, 2, sometimes 3 of us each branch, Chris, John. And that's what we want to do. We really want to get out there. In terms of me, we're now coming into the sort of the 5th month of my presidency, and I don't think I could have asked for anything better in trying to get the message out there and trying to engage with as many branches as possible. I think I've got another maybe 5 or 6 branches to engage with. I've engaged with all the sector groups as well, and that's all going well. The one thing I do want to say, but just before I hand over to the amazing Tim Eldridge, is, Chris, is there any way that we can look at our volunteers, especially within your branch, the great volunteers that we've got, especially within your executive committee, and start looking at some of these President's Distinguished Service Awards? You know, we haven't done very well in the last few years, and we should really be rewarding our amazing volunteers. I've given out 7 or 8 so far, and I want to give out as many as I can. Not just because they're there, but because our volunteers have not been getting, I think, the amount of kudos that they deserve. So I'd like you to reach out probably to your regional manager and your relationship manager or your regional manager, and just have a chat about that. Would be wonderful. But I'll put my address in at the bottom of the chat, Chris. I'm here, I'm available, I'm everywhere, I hope. And if I'm not, tell me what I'm doing wrong and just drop me an email. I'll hand over back to you, John. Chris, your executive team, I'll pop in again in a couple of months' time and just see how well you're doing, and just come in and just throw my hat in the ring and just say, have you got anything for me? Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks very much, John.
That's great. Thanks so much, Jimmy. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your journey.
Just one thing I was going to say, Jimmy, was when we something I instigated was when we were meeting physically, we had, not by way of an icebreaker, but very, very important to commend success. And one of the things we did was asked if people had got new certifications, new courses, any reasons to mention something that they'd done, whether it be particularly professionally, but personally as well. And we did that. We started to do that on physical meetings, and that was really important, because whether people do, you know, there's SHEQ and all sorts of other associated organisations and courses for that matter. You know, whether it be NEBOSH, whether it be NCRQ, whether it be British Safety Council, wherever it might be environmental. We started to ask those people if they would just like to say if they'd passed a particular honour or award. I think that's something that particularly I feel is very, very important. We're all taking a professional journey, whether it's getting your CPD up to date, whether it's finishing your IPD, whether it's doing a doctorate in health and safety, whatever it might be. It's really important to encourage those health and safety and other professionals forward. So that's something that certainly we are hoping to continue in IOSH Staffordshire, particularly when we meet in person, is to make sure that we're encouraging, because that's the biggest motivators, to be encouraged and to get that pat on the back from your peers. So I just wanted to put that one in there, Jimmy, to support your presidential awards.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Chris. And I'm meeting with Bev Vanessa Harwood-Witcher and Richard Orton in a couple of weeks' time, and there's some real stuff that I want to do. You'll remember this more than anybody else. When at the back of the Soldier magazine, if you got promoted, your name popped up in the back of the Soldier magazine. Maybe a couple of months later, I want to try and get something like that going in the Soldier magazine again for our members that reach chartered. Maybe not so much tech and grad, or what grad's going to be called next, but if you reach chartered, then get in the back of the Soldier magazine so people can have that recognition as well. And you're absolutely right, Chris, it's coming up with those initiatives that recognise our volunteers.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jimmy. Really appreciate your words of wisdom there, and that you're taking on, some suggestions and ideas from members. We all recognise, even though we're leaders of men and women, not all the ideas come from us sometimes, but often they come from the people that support and are on the journey with us. So I really appreciate you taking those ideas and suggestions forward, Jimmy. So thank you very much. Really respect what you're doing there.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Over to you, John. Thank you very much. Let's carry on this evening. Thank you, John.
That's great. Thanks very much, Chris. I've just popped a question there in the chat box, folks. While Jim is still here and his signal holds out on his train journey before he hits any tunnels, has anybody got any questions for Jimmy, the president of IOSH? If you want to unmute yourself and ask outright, or if you want to pop your question in the chat box, we'll give that just another few more seconds. Okay, if not, then Jimmy, thanks ever so much for joining us this evening. It's very much appreciated. I know you've had an extraordinarily busy day and obviously a very busy schedule as president of IOSH. So I wish you all the very best. Have a good evening, Jimmy. Have a good journey back home or wherever you're traveling to. Thanks very much. Right, folks. So moving on to the next part of our meeting this evening. Over the last couple of sessions that we've had here in the Staffordshire branch, we've all had an extraordinarily busy day, week, month, etc. We attend various different events where there's sometimes quite a lot of PowerPoint slides. So just to try and change things around a bit, rather than a typical presentation where someone's talking on a topic and the slides and other bits and pieces, this is very much more relaxed evening tonight, ladies and gentlemen. It's in the style of a general conversation and Q&A. And tonight's guest speaker, as Chris already introduced, is Tim Eldridge, a good friend who's Vice President of IOSH and also Global Head of Health and Safety for a major financial institution. So this evening, we're going to be talking to Tim. I've got a few questions to ask Tim, and it's very much open to you, ladies and gentlemen, tonight. If you've got any questions you'd like to ask Tim around health and safety, the impact of Brexit, the impact of COVID, we've got a few things that we'll be covering off, but any questions at all, now's your opportunity. We've got one of the most senior seasoned professionals here in the health and safety world with us this evening. It's a great opportunity if you've got any questions at all to ask Tim. Please use the chat feature, pop any questions you've got in there, and we'll come to those as we move on through. But without further delay, we'll introduce Tim. So Tim, over to you. If you could briefly say hello to everybody, your role within IOSH and also broadly in the financial institution. Tell us a little bit about you, Tim.
Thanks, John, and hi, everyone. I think this is my first visit to Staffordshire branch, so better late than never, may I suggest, and delighted to be here. One of the things that I said to John, I said to many people, the pandemic has created a huge amount of turmoil in all our lives, and we'll be talking about that, I'm sure, over the next half an hour or so. But I mean, for IOSH, obviously we do miss face-to-face, and there's huge amounts of benefit of face-to-face, but the ability for us to connect and have virtual branch meetings, and therefore the likes of myself and others can kind of pop in where perhaps traveling to a venue would be a little bit beyond our ability. So it's fantastic that we've got this opportunity, and as I said, a bit late than never, but I'm here and I'm glad to be here. And also, I'm really pleased that you invited me. And obviously, I do a lot of work with IOSH as Vice President and present on a number of IOSH topics, which I really enjoy doing and hopefully benefit the institution. But today's a little bit different, isn't it? Because I've got the chance to talk a little bit more from my day job capacity. Now, there's nothing sinister in me being announced as the head of health and safety for a global financial institution, and I've got no problem in telling you that is HSBC Bank. But the reason we're doing that is I'm not officially here to speak on behalf of HSBC, and I just want to make that clear. But I will be able to give you, hopefully, a lot of insight into how I've been working with my organisation and similar organisations to manage the pandemic as well as other things over the last few years. So I guess been with HSBC now for just over 5 years. Before that, I worked for a global insurance company called Aviva. You may have known them, and global head of health and safety for them. And then you really want to go back in the annals of time. I spent 10 years in Australia, working for the health and safety regulators in both South Australia and Queensland. That was quite interesting. And then prior to that, I was an inspector with the health and safety executive. And that was back in the 90s. So I'm probably showing my age now, John, a little bit. But you may have guessed that by the fact that I'm now doing a DIY lockdown haircut. So
aren't we all, Tim?
I'll be on, indeed.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Thanks very much, Tim. Again, on a wholly different scale, but also global head of health and safety. And the company I work for, we've got offices from Tokyo to Toronto, from Sydney to Santiago. And I guess looking at the date now, 18th of March 2021, we're getting very close to the UK anniversary, for want of a much better phrase, of when our Prime Minister stood at a lectern and announced that the nation was going to be in unprecedented times, the likes of which have never been seen before. We're put into lockdown. But I guess, Tim, we both kind of were aware of what we now know as COVID-19 a little bit before that, as our respective employers were having this popping up in various different parts of the world. But I guess to kick things off, Tim, to wind the clock back 12, 13 months, when it was becoming clear that this is a significant issue that's facing us all, what were those first stages like in terms of that sudden dynamics and change to think, right, the whatever's normal is suddenly going to change? You've got a very large workforce, as any other major financial institution would. You've got frontline people who need to be there to keep counters open, to allow the financial world to carry on operating, and for people to get their cash out at a basic level and transact. At the same time, keeping these people safe, as well as then presumably a huge back office operation to also remobilize to get at home and so forth. How on earth do you begin to tackle something like that for a global organization?
Yeah, well, now that's a question and a half, and I will hopefully, in really briefly, give you a bit of a potted history of my last 15 months. So first of all, I didn't even know that there was a place called Wuhan until the branch manager phoned me up back in about mid-January and said, we may have a bit of a problem here. I said, oh, where are you? I said, this is my health and safety manager for China who put me in touch. We have around 30,000 employees in China, and obviously branches everywhere. So that was my first introduction. But what was really interesting is we moved very quickly to form a global major incident group. So I think that was that good judgment, good luck? I don't know. Hopefully the former. But I think if we hadn't done that, we'd have been in major trouble. So even though back in mid-January, clearly the pandemic was very much China focused, a little bit into Hong Kong. So, again, got huge population in Hong Kong, but was very contained there, as you may remember, for the first few weeks. And we were dealing with that, and particularly in the globally connected world. So, in an organization, for example, my organization's got 230,000 employees in 60 countries, and people were moving around, right? And so we, with China being a major market, there would be, and I'm sure all financial institutions were similar, there were people moving around regularly, and it was just a way of working that was completely normal to be moving around the different countries. And so even though at that point the virus is very, very much contained in the China, sort of Hong Kong, Macau area, we knew there were people coming and going. And then there was another challenge, which you may recall, that the Chinese New Year happened fairly soon after that. And again, I'm sure, like many of your organizations, if you've got similar profile to mine, we have lots of expats who wanted to travel either back to China to see their family, or from China to Hong Kong or various other parts of the world to celebrate Chinese New Year. And I think that was one of the key spreading events, not just for our organisation clearly, but for all organisations. And so the fact that we'd set up a major incident group so early enabled us to start to deal with particularly the issues that were starting to happen. So that's kind of like the early days, and we had, and what's really interesting as well is that my role was kind of, oh yeah, there's Tim's head of health and safety, but yeah, he looks after people slipping and tripping and falling, and ergonomics and all of this stuff. And this isn't, they never really saw me and my team as being part of anything that needed to be dealt with when major incidents came along. This was a game changer for my team, and I'm hoping for all of you as well as health and safety professionals. I think our reputation as a profession has had a marked and hopefully sustained change in its perception. We know Conker's bonkers and health and safety, and we were always hit with these ridiculous accusations which were based on perception. They weren't reality. But the fact that we were then able to be right slap bang in the middle of the response for our organisations, advising and supporting, I think made a massive difference, John, and I'm sure to you too. I will fast forward very quickly to sort of 3 months later when we went into national lockdown, moving from about 150,000 employees in offices, and then around 80,000 in branches. In fact, not quite that. I think it was more like 200,000 in offices, 50,000, 30,000 in branches. We very quickly had over 200,000 employees working from home, which is like, whoa, what? How? So this is, when these are major operations of any financial institution. You'll have call centers for people who want to take out mortgages, people who want to do foreign exchange, all of these call centers, you probably imagine them, massive big buildings. We had massive presence in India, in China, in other parts of the world, in Mexico, where we have thousands of our employees taking calls and doing bank business. They had to move from home, start to move to work from home. So I've got to take my hat off to all people in IT, who perhaps also are slightly maligned in the world. My computer's not working, oh, that bloody IT team. But, for what they've achieved in trying to get so many people organised and working from home and delivering key customer service is phenomenal. So that's something as well I hold my hat off to. And then, of course, customer facing, so branch staff who had no choice, really. They had to be in, we had to continue to provide the services. Most governments declared banking as a key service that would remain open, and therefore you had to think about the impact on branch staff, who obviously were very anxious and very concerned about their own health, but also having to deal with customers, and being able to very, very quickly install and put in place the required control measures was again a huge achievement by facilities management team. And again, another group of people who are often dealt with, oh, my chair's broken, or the toilets are dirty, and they get abuse. But for what they did in getting all of the social distancing marking, getting all of the perspex screens in place, it's been quite remarkable to see how organizations have responded and come together and worked better than they ever have done before. And maybe it shouldn't have taken a pandemic to do that, but boy, when it did happen, it happened well. So I've been very impressed.
Yeah, thanks very much, Tim, and thank you for guiding us through that with such openness and candor. I guess if you're a hairdresser's or a pub or a restaurant or a non-essential retailer, with the greatest respect, then by the time that had then opened up, and again, my dates are escape me now, but when would that be? May, June time, something like that last year. There's already been a whole pile of work and a whole load of research and government guidance and so forth around how to actually do this now with 2 meters, with your barriers and various different bits and pieces. As you outlined there, Tim, your financial services right front and center, pretty much day one. That is an essential service. That doesn't stop. So how did you find that? I guess in the very early stages, there was an absence of government guidance, I presume. I mean, I don't know whether you and others were perhaps involved at that early stage in helping to indeed even prepare that government guidance. How did you find working with your facilities team and others to negotiate your way through something where there is no book to turn to? There is no guide out there.
Yeah, well, what we did, and when I was very clear as part to our senior leaders as we were managing our major incident group, we needed expert advice. So yes, I've got 30 odd years of experience in occupational health and safety, and other colleagues have got numerous years in business continuity, incident management. But we needed expert medical advice. This was a pandemic. This was a disease that no one knew about. I don't know if you remember, it was called the novel, well, it still is called the novel coronavirus. The reason it was called novel was because it was new. So right from day one, we engaged an expert doctor clinician in infectious disease, who we've had now. Initially, we were meeting daily, even at the weekends, and he was joining the call. Now, interestingly, just this week, we've just dropped our cadence now to twice a week, and every other week, and once a week on every other week. That's amazing. That shows that things are going hopefully reasonably well globally, even though there are some challenges, which I'll sure talk about in a minute. But having that expertise, we just worked with him and said, look, he was tuned into all of the advice around the virus. So I remember, I was mocked a bit by my colleagues, because sort of, when you're in a crisis, the humor comes through, right? So I ended up becoming global head of face masks, global head of hand sanitizer, global head of testing, just because we were just working through all of these scenarios. And we very quickly built up a bank of frequently asked questions, which I'm sure many of you did as well. Excuse me, using the doctor to be able to ensure that we were really clear. So, even questions are like, when do you use a face mask? That changed, didn't it, very quickly? What type of face masks? When do you have to, where should we put our hand sanitizers? What about the 2 meter distancing? What about customer interface when they're dealing with cash? All of that. But yeah, I think if we hadn't had our doctor from day one, we would have been in big trouble.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Tim. Just touching on the I guess exodus from offices to the home environment. Yeah, on whatever scale, whether people here work for an SME and they've got a smaller number of people in their office, or whether you're talking about a major global organization. How did you, or what level of support more broadly could organizations put in place in those early days? On your organization, you've got a couple of 100,000 people. Some may have small numbers, but in those, again, that early stage, what kind of support typically are people providing, where people are spending their working life in an office environment? Now they're not, they're now a home worker. How did you overcome that challenge?
Yeah, I'll answer that. Just before I do, you may notice I'm coughing. This is quite bizarre, right? So I had the virus early January, and was very fortunate that I didn't have it very badly, and recovered well. And I've also had my first vaccination as a matter of interest, and developed a cough about a week ago. And it's like really weird, right? It's one of these sort of tickly, persistent coughs. And I'm thinking, well, I knew from our doctor I couldn't have it again, because it takes about 3 months before your antibodies will probably will decay enough to be susceptible to a different variant. So I got myself tested. I got my results yesterday, and I am negative. But it's almost like the thing you don't want to be seen doing now. Coughing is it's almost like the smoking, isn't it? You don't want to be seen smoking in public. Now you don't want to be seen coughing in public. So apologies to people who think I might be suffering, but I'm absolutely fine, and I got the qualification yesterday. But I might have to cough a bit as I talk. So back work from home. Well, first of all, I was very clear that obviously we know as health and safety professionals around ergonomics, and whether you're working in office or working at home, the risks are the same. And clearly we've got very strong requirements as a profession around ensuring people are ergonomically sound when they're working. And of course, the majority of our population are working, from a desk with IT equipment all of the time. But the other thing I made it really clear is we've gone very rapidly from people being regularly in the office to home. We've got 40,000 of our employees in India. We've got 30-odd thousand in China. You've got 20-odd thousand in Hong Kong, 40-odd thousand in the UK, 20-odd thousand in Mexico. These people are all different. So in the UK, probably people had the opportunity, most of them, if not, to have a desk and a screen. But we also knew very quickly there'll be people who live in multiple occupancy apartments, and certainly in Southeast Asia with multiple generations of family. How they wouldn't have, the luxury of what I've got here, of a desk and a laptop and a screen and a keyboard. And also we'd have people who, maybe, sharing with other in-house shares. All they've got is their bedroom. So they may have to be working off their bed, off their couch, off their dining table, and off their kitchen table. So starting to preach all of the, standard ergonomic requirements just wasn't going to be the way to go. And I was really clear about that. And interesting, we made, the UK regulator, the HSE, came out a few weeks after we'd made our decision to also say, look, you've just got to make the best of what you've got. But we have a relationship with an ergonomic specialist organisation who we use for all of our ergonomic assessments, and I use them very much to give just some real clear guidance around best things to do when you are in a temporary situation. You're working from your bed or your couch or your kitchen table, around making sure that perhaps if you need a cushion to keep your back straight, you get up regularly, move around. And so, yeah, it was absolutely tough, and people didn't have it easy. And I'm very aware that there were thousands of people, or tens and hundreds of thousands, millions of people in the financial services industry in that boat. So it was important to understand that, and then over time to transition them, as it was clear that working from home, both from a pandemic point of view, was going to take longer than we thought. But also, of course, we can talk a little bit about the future of the workplace when people are going to be working more regularly. So we've started to not adapt because our systems are already in place for good ergonomics at home, but just recognizing we can support people a bit more. So, I think that's where we shone as well as a profession, that we didn't get the clipboard out and go, right, you've got to have this, and this, which clearly wasn't going to work. But we worked with people to give them the best support possible.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Tim. Moving forward, how do you think that's going to change? So we've also got the guidance here in the UK, which is broadly mirrored around the world in terms of social distancing and the reduction in intense offices. There are offices in central London, thousands and thousands of people based in there, and other major cities around the world. Right now, they could be reduced in some cases 15, 20, 30% of previous occupancy. Do you envisage a time where we'll go back to 2019 and before, where that intense headcount of people on a floor plate will come back, or do you think that's now a permanent shift in the way that we use our offices?
I think it's gone. I know it's gone. You hear from a number of organisations, very very large, FTSE 100 or other companies that list on the New York Stock Exchange and so on, which have made it very clear that that's going to change. And it's going to change for multiple reasons. First of all, it's the right thing to do, right? What we've been able to do is do and all organizations have done a huge, massive stress test on the ability to have flexible working. Now, of course, we didn't want that to be everyone forced to work from home for so long, but unfortunately, that's the way of the world. But the ability to recognize that people are able to be flexible working, and my organization, I'm sure others, and we did regularly testing that out. First of all, you look at productivity. Has productivity dropped? No. In fact, in some cases, it's increased. Have you asked employees what they think? So we've been out and asked everybody what they think, and you get this huge range of people. Some who clearly want to go back to the office full time, which is great. Some who would actually now like to work from home full time, which is great. But of course, it's the majority are somewhere in the middle, where they'd like to have a hybrid way of working. So, like any organization, and as we talk about in health and safety, listen to your people, hear what they're saying. And so, we're doing that. And I think without a shadow of a doubt, the place of work is going to be different. I can't ignore cost. So renting a multi-story office block in the center of London or center of Hong Kong or the center of Mexico City is not cheap. And if you can reduce your footprint, your building footprint, clearly that's going to be a benefit. And certainly many chief financial officers and finance directors are looking at that, and that's fine. And I think even publicly, the group chief executive of HSBC has said that over time they're going to reduce by 40% the building footprint because of that hybrid working. Now, we will come on, I'm sure, John and Amit, because flexible working and having people coming in various times, you're not quite sure what they do. How on earth do you manage first aid and fire marshal provision in that world? Now, that's my biggest number one priority now, is to start to think. We've got a massive project going on. How on earth do we do that? And the old ways of having 4 first aiders per floor, and then 5 fire marshals per floor. That's great, but what days are they going to be in? Are there going to be days when they're all going to be in, or no one's going to be in? We have to rethink that, and I don't have all the answers. We're looking at it in quite a lot of depth, but as much as the flexible workplace is going to be great, and I can't wait for it as well, it's going to throw up a few challenges for us. And again, this is where we need to come to our fore, isn't it? And come up with the solutions that are going to work, not with our clipboard going, well, you're going to have to train every single person on the floor as a first aider then. That's not going to work. We have to think of other ways of doing it.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Tim. Just looking at some of the questions. So we have, I can see Jimmy, I think, has dropped off on his journey now. But we've got a third of the presidential team here. We've also got another vice president. Delighted to welcome this evening to Neil Catton. Welcome, Neil. And Neil's asked a question which just touches on that again, Tim, I guess, as the new normal, or moving things forward. So as COVID quietly doesn't go away, but with vaccinations and testing and everything else, we start to return to a level of normality. With that shift of, you mentioned there, something like a 40% reduction, I think you said, in terms of a floor plan of a typical organisation. What about things like health and safety training? Are the days gone where we bring together a group of people into a training room and deliver IOSH managing safely, for example? Is that going to shift more so onto online? Are we going to see another re-emergence and a big surge in e-learning? How do you think that'll play out? And if there is a drive to more online-based training, whether that be in this format, which is what we're doing at work a lot of, or with our e-learning, does that have a potential compromise on standards of training? Is Neil's question.
Yeah, and a really good question. I think the answer, the general answer is very similar to what I said before, is the world of work is changing, so we will have to adapt to that. So again, will we go to everything being online training? Of course we won't. Will we go back to the pre-2019, the 2019 where everything has to be face-to-face? Of course not. We have to find a hybrid way. Let's talk IOSH. IOSH is in a fantastic position to be leading in this. We are the largest deliverer of health and safety training globally, I would probably suggest, but certainly here in the UK, we've got an opportunity to influence that. So, for example, first aid training. We're used to having people in a room and St John's Ambulance, whoever it is, doing the CPR training on the dummies and stuff like that. If we are looking to get people CPR skill trained, there will be a need for some physical interaction with them. If we're looking to impart general knowledge on them, then a lot of that can be done online, and that can also be done in a competency way. So not just read that information and that's it, you get your certificate. That we can test. There's some fantastic technology that can really test people properly, as you would do in a classroom scenario. So I am certainly convinced and actually completely comfortable with the fact that health and safety training will be much more hybrid and varied in the future. There will always be a need for physical training, of course, but I think we as an institution, but also the people who are we've probably got people on here who are training deliverers, really looking to you to come up with solutions to help organizations like myself to deal with the future and how it's going to work.
Yeah, some of the basic things here, like PAT testing, for example. When you've got a number of people in an office, it's relatively straightforward to get PAT testers in there to work their way through and test everything. Or if you've got a remote sales force, you can organise an event on the day when everyone comes in and dumps laptops in one particular bank of desks, and by the time they finish their one-day event, they take their laptop back home again. To mobilise that now with a body of people who are working from home on a pretty permanent basis. Things like pat testing, do you think that's finally going to be, according to the nail in the coffin? It's not my favorite topic, pat testing, but yeah, this notion where, oh, you must get everything tested every 12 months. Do you think that is going to shift back to perhaps when you read the guidance, what it actually says, which is more around visual observation and checking that your equipment is in good order? And if not, then obviously flag that, stop using it and get that replaced. How do we tackle things like pat testing, Tim?
So absolutely, I think, huge, particularly here in the UK, there's been a huge, be careful what I say here in case there's any pat testing people on the call, but I think generally it's been over-engineered, ridiculously over-engineered in proportion to the risk. Now, I'm a risk manager, you're all risk managers. Therefore, I've been very clear and had said from very early on that pat testing or electrical testing needs to be risk-based, always has, by the way, and always should be. So, for example, and also the other part I've been really, really clear is about employee responsibility. We all know about employer responsibility. That's our bread and butter. But of course, we know that employees have their own responsibility to do, to look after their own equipment and to be vigilant in what they do. So, just a little bit technical, but I'll just quickly go into it. Certainly visual inspection is an employee responsibility, and we're making sure that we remind them. So we have annual health and safety training for all of our 230,000 employees online, of course, because you couldn't do that face to face. I actually develop the content, and I always remind our people that they have their own personal responsibility to check and to ensure that they're working safely. Then just thinking about, you've got double insulated cables, plugs on a computer, a laptop charger. What's the risk there? If it's visually sound, it's double insulated. Why are we looking to get that pat testing? We shouldn't. In fact, we don't do pat testing of any of our, IT, basic desk IT equipment. We do visual inspection, yes, but we don't do pat testing. So pat testing is where the risk is high. And clearly, where you've got, equipment that's being used in a regular environment, it's earthed and there's possibility of leakage, and it's used in a harsh environment, obviously things like, cleaning machinery, and, I don't need to go into that. Of course, we've got a pat testing regime, but back at home, people have to take responsibility, and we are certainly not going to be going around doing pat testing in people's homes. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah. Great. Thank you very much, Tim. Just drifting on back to the real estate side of things. So you and other major organizations have got large floor plates in city centres right around the world. Moving forward, if there is a reduction in that floor plate, how do you see the landscape change? So I presume right now there probably aren't going to be too many investors queuing up to build another 80-story skyscraper in a city centre anytime soon. For those that are already there, how do you envisage that changing? Where you've got organisations occupying 42 floors of a tower, for example, then they're not going to be doing that moving forward, presumably. So what happens then? Will we find they get carved into smaller sublets? Do you think there'd be some kind of reconfiguration, perhaps into a mix of residential and commercial? Have you got any thoughts on how the real estate market's going to change?
Potentially, yeah. I think the big city centre, we're talking about financial institutions now, so let's use Canary Wharf for an example, and anyone's been there will know exactly what Canary Wharf is like. They won't change, and I think they will still be financial centres and financial institutions. I think the way that employees interact with the building will change. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you've got a tower block which normally you have, say, 10,000 people working in, and those 10,000 people work there. And in fact, if you went there 2 years ago on a Friday, you'd probably find it half occupied, because by then, even 2 years ago, people were starting to work from home on a Friday. What you got to do is what chief operating officers and building owners, people responsible for the buildings are doing, are saying we can change all that on something like a desk share ratio. So now every desk is a hot desk, and you can share that one desk between 7 people. So instead of only 10,000 people being able to work from that building, you've now got potentially 50 to 60,000 being able to work from that building. Then looking at technology, which you can use for desk booking. So you can use your phone now to book your desk. You can use your phone to order your food from the restaurant. You can use your phone to don't check anything, report an incident. So all of that, and it has to be technology enabled. So organizations need to rapidly move to understand that without the technology, you're not going to be able to use your buildings in an optimal way. So again, there needs to be a great collaboration with IT, HR, building management, and so on to be able to do that. But absolutely think that's not going to change the city centre that much. I may be wrong, it's still very early days. I think the other thing that will happen is that there's going to be what's called a hub and spoke model, that you may have offices in major urban centres, and people can just go to the one that's nearest to them and that's most suitable. And again, using the technology to be able to book a desk and work from there. So I think, excuse me, that's where probably the shrinkage will be more in the urban centres, but not necessarily in the main city financial centres of New York, Hong Kong, London, and so on.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Tim. What's the general approach in terms of, just looking at a question here from Liz? She asks, what's the plan for the roadmap to return? Be good to share best practice. Well, hopefully, Liz, you've heard some good examples in the discussion so far this evening. Another question here talks about COVID testing, Tim. So obviously, I guess your organisation and others will be looking at rapid flow testing on a personal level. My wife works at our village school where our 2 children are based. So pretty much this year, she's been having to do 2 COVID tests at home, Wednesdays and Sundays. In the UK here, last Monday, the Monday before, the last couple of weeks, UK government actively encouraged and said, look, if you are an adult with a child or a student in your household, in your bubble, then please do apply for a home lateral flow COVID test. You can either get 1 box put to the post, or you can turn up to your local testing centre and collect 28 tests. You do 2 tests a week, so I've got 14 weeks worth downstairs. And that's now openly encouraged. So anyone who's got a young person in their family, please go ahead and get this done. The government are also looking at options for workplaces to set up their own testing regimes, where you mentioned that office there, where rather than just 10,000 people at a desk, you've now potentially got 60,000 people hot desking. There's presumably quite a substantial cleaning regime and various things in place to clean those desks down in between users. Are you also looking at COVID testing, so people test either before they come in or they test at the point of arriving?
Okay, quite a lot in there. I'll start with your question, Liz, around the roadmap to return. Again, very much driven by the medical science. So what we've done, and I know many other organisations have done, have got a phased approach to return to the work. So, and I'll use an example. This isn't necessarily our example, but phase 1 is 20%, phase 2 is 40%, phase 3 is 60%, and so on of the building being occupied. Driven by the medical science, and the triggers to move between the phases, absolutely driven by the data. So, infection rates, hospitalization rates, death rates, starting to look at vaccination rates as well, and making sure that we call it an air gap. Financial world, financial institutions love to make up, funny phrases for what's a very straightforward thing. So basically, an air gap, all an air gap is putting time between moving from one phase to another, whether that's like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or in the case of the UK government, they've actually done 5 weeks. So data driven, and the point bit, and also be very careful, because if you go too quick, you may have to roll back, and rolling back is very difficult once you've gone. So we've very much taken the approach. Caution is the buzzword. And each country we operate in is going to do it based on the country's statistics. So that's really the roadmap. And I know many organisations are taking a similar kind of roadmap to return to the workplace. Testing is a really interesting one. Something that we've been debating for weeks and months, and also very much supported by the expert medical advice. For those who don't know, there are various types of COVID test. You may have heard of the PCR test. That's the most reliable. That's the one where you take your swab, you stick it in your mouth and try not to gag, and you stick it up your nose and try not to sneeze. That then I know, did that 2 days ago. Then it doesn't get any easier, does it? And they go off to the lab, and then you get your results back in 24 hours. The reliability of those tests is in the high 90s for most types of tests. So really good. But of course, the problem is someone has a test, you won't know for 1, 2, 3 days whether that's positive or negative. And certainly, you know, we've been from day one, we've had the most important message: if you are not well, you do not come to work. You know, you'd be amazed. I've heard stories of people who are, you know, almost on, you know, coughing and sneezing and feeling unwell, but don't want to let the side down, so coming into the workplace. And, you know, again, that's going to become, you know, almost one of the worst things to do as an employee. So and most government organisations around the world have said, you know, if people have got symptoms, go and get your PCR test, and that's reserved for that. And we've been very clear to our people to use government available testing. Where that's not been available, as an organisation, we have made that available for people, but that tends to be fairly small. Most governments have provided that. Now, the second test, which is the antigen test, which is normally the rapid lateral flow test, which John outlined, the reliability of that can be anything from about 30% to 60%, depending on two things. One is how good you are at doing the swab, because now we all have to do it ourselves, right? And be interested to know how the kids are getting on, whether they're any better at touching their tonsils and the top of their nose than us weak adults are, who don't do it. So that obviously accuracy is impacted by that. And then the other thing is the amount of viral load you have. So if you're asymptomatic, it's likely only about 50% will you get a positive result. So the false negative results is about 50%. So we've been very clear, because the tendency is to get tested, get your result, and go, hey, I know exactly how I am. So we've held back from lateral flow testing for those reasons. We've said all of the controls we've got in the workplace, from good hygiene, social distancing, all of the physical barriers, and the working from home, they are our controls. Testing can help, but we're certainly not using it as a key control. And I think it's interesting. I've got my own personal views on what the education department here in the UK is doing. I won't share them with you. But I think, the biggest risk we've always had is that people rely on controls that aren't effective. So if you take that back to our day jobs as health and safety professionals, we would never expect to use a control that's 50% effective. 50% of the time the guard on that machine will work, and 50% it won't. But we'll put it on anyway, hope for the best. You've got to really be, we've got to provide that advice as professionals around the risk management, and that's certainly something that me and my team have been doing.
Thanks very much, Tim. As people start returning back to the office environment, in some cases, for example, Scotland, I know it's different in the financial world where it is an essential service, but some of my clients, some organisations we've come across through IOSH and other places, they have had people in Scotland particularly who effectively have not left the house, work related for 12 months. Moving away from COVID and looking at the other 101 regulations under the Health and Safety Work Act, and health and safety as we used to know it prior to 2020, that hasn't gone away. That's still very much there. As you mentioned, we would never dream of putting a control, say a guard that works just half of the time, or those brakes on that forklift truck that may work 50% of the time. You wouldn't dream of it. As your organisation or others that you come across looked at almost reinducting people back into the world of work, certainly something we're exploring and actively doing through my company is just that. I've got a broader fear across the IOSH world that over the coming days, weeks and months here in the UK, as people start returning back to something like a level of normality, that it will be a spike in those daft things like you're leaving a dishwasher door open in the kitchen breakout area and someone wrapping the ankles around it, or bang your head on the kitchen door, or slips and trips, or manual handling related issues. I'd probably imagine that if you're a pickpocket, then as the public transport hubs probably start getting back to some level of normality, then that's a great opportunity to go and tidy up some of the earnings that you've lost out over the last 12 months. So people who haven't been used to getting on trains and haven't got used to being in that environment of public transport suddenly find themselves victims of petty crime and various things. From a driving perspective, some people can be doing 30,000-40,000 miles a year in sales roles who've now been doing all that via Teams. On a personal level, again, I can't remember the last time I got on a motorway. It's, I don't know, October half term, I should think. It's been months. So the roadcraft and road skills that we've got may be a little bit rusty. I'm not sure whether you and other organisations are doing something similar around, say, almost like reinducting or reawakening people's health and safety brain as they start to return back to work.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think there's a couple of things. First of all, I'm we won't know yet, but I'm going to be really interested in seeing how individuals' risk perception changes. People now, the population around the world now is a lot more risk averse because of the pandemic, right? So, you try go into the supermarket without a mask on, and things will change very quickly, and you'll be spoken to very quickly. But I'm going to be really interested in how people's attitudes within the workplace are different when they go back. It will vary across the world because we have different cultures. I know that the cultures in Southeast Asia are different to the Indian subcontinent, are different to Europe, are different to North America, and different to South America. But first, just basics. Are people going to go up and start hugging each other in September or not? Or people are going to be a lot more standoffish? But I think there is going to be a change in people's risk perception. So that's going to be something I'm as a health and safety professional, I'm going to be really interested in seeing, and hopefully we've got some fantastic researchers who are going to be able to help us all, and IOSH maybe as well, just to see how that changes. So that's going to be interesting. I'm hoping that will be for the better, not for the worse, but who knows. And then the other one is, for example, my organisation, very fortunate that I'm able to provide a health and safety training, as I mentioned before, to every single employee annually. And certainly the annual one actually takes place next month, and gives me the opportunity to really put in the key messages like you've been speaking about, John, about reminding people about their own responsibilities to others. Now, I'm not naive. The 230,000 bankers or insurance brokers, are they going to be reading every word that's in that, or are they going to try and get through it as quickly as possible to tick the box? Well, probably the latter, but subliminally, hopefully some of those messages you'll get through.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much, Tim. Moving away from COVID, obviously other issues over the last recent period has been the big B word. Has there been any impact in the financial markets from Brexit that's had any link to health and safety?
None that I've noticed. Clearly the fact that, a lot of organizations, I work for a global organization, so they can adjust the way they operate, and most have to accommodate Brexit. Other than some of the very technical stuff around trading in the markets, where there's few regulations and people have to move things around a little bit, which I don't get involved in. But I haven't seen a huge impact. Obviously we're aware of some of the impact in the media of various cost increases of shipping things around, and not going to get into all of the latest dramas on imports and exports of vaccinations across Europe, but I don't think there is going to be a huge impact. Interestingly, Brexit happened in the middle of the pandemic, so you might get that sort of mask theory where one's masking the other, or is the other masking it vice versa, or is there actually no real impact? But we will see. But I think generally from a day-to-day health and safety management perspective, wherever you are in the world, I don't see any change at the moment.
Yeah, I think as an industry, probably more insulated than others. You're not dealing with imports, exports, and so forth, which I know other sectors have had quite a challenging time, but also been an opportunity for great improvements and opportunities here to attract new business. Drifting on again in terms of non-COVID related things, has anything changed that you notice either where you are or within the wider sector around further focus on business continuity? I see that in terms of tenders and things coming through, seems to be a lot bigger drive where you've got an organisation looking to point companies to, I don't know, infrastructure or whatever it is that's going to be constructed, perhaps, where absolutely key, particularly where that's taxpayers' money that's going into this particular project, whatever that may be, on behalf of government department. They want to be absolutely damn sure that the supply chain and organisations working on that tender have got robust continuity plans in place. Have you seen any change in that, Tim?
Oh, I think without a doubt, I think those organisations who didn't really put too much effort into business continuity have been caught very short, and will have been backpedaling very quickly and recruiting people to retrofit their business continuity plans. Those organisations that have always put a strong emphasis in business continuity have been okay. They've been great. I mean, I challenge anyone to say that their organisation had a business continuity plan that predicted what's just happened. In fact, I don't think they would, and I've been involved in doing business continuity plans myself for things like pandemic flu, and you would never have envisaged a scenario where the whole world was in lockdown, right? So, we have to, give them a bit of slack and say, look, I think the business continuity professionals have done really well for those who were prepared. But those who weren't prepared, they're playing catch up, right? And I'm sure they will be ready for the next one. But it goes back to everything that we say in our profession, right? That you can't, if you don't plan, you're gonna have a problem. If you don't do your risk management, you're gonna think about what may happen, and you've got to put in place the scenario plans to deal with it. Excuse me. Like when you got a cough, you can't speak.
Great, thank you, Tim. And for everybody on the call, that leads nicely into a little nudge, a date for your diary, the third Thursday in July, which off the top of my head, I think is the 15th. Let's have a double check. Yes, it is Thursday, the 15th of July. We have got the lead trainer from the British Standards Institute, BSI, going to do a presentation on that very topic, business continuity, and looking at the benefits and how to adopt, or even if you don't get to the extent of getting it certified, but certainly look at the principles of ISO 22301, which is the international standard for business continuity. So date for your diaries, folks. That's 6 p.m. on Thursday, the 15th of July, all about business continuity with a lead trainer from the British Standards Institute, no less. A question here.
Oh, sorry. I know we're running out of time. I just wanted to touch on Andy's question.
I'll just go back to read that one out. Yeah, as regards mental well-being, how have your organisation supported its home workers and the support of employees coming back to the workplace? Great question. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely vital, and having the resources there to support. So, every single one of our employees, wherever they sit in the world, has access to employee assistance, including counselling, and we also have huge amount of mental health support and training in place, and I'm sure many organisations do. But just to go to the sort of the heart of the question, Andy, one of the things we're really clear about is there are people who will have struggled working from home. And although predominantly reserve the spaces in the office at the moment and during the lockdown for critical workers, we have defined people struggling with mental health as a critical worker to give them the opportunity to get out. And then the other thing we're very conscious of, as well as we do go back to the office and return to the workplace, I think it's something you all need to think about, is there will be individuals who will be very anxious about doing that. So forcing them to go back, well, if they absolutely have to, and you can't operate without them being in that physical place, have a think about it. But we've got to be very, very careful. People's anxiety levels are going to be very different. I know there's people who can't wait to do what Jimmy's done and got on a train and get into the workplace. I've been sat at this desk for the last 15 months, but also there'll be people who will be very reluctant to go back, and we have to be very conscious of that, support them in doing it.
Yeah, really good point. Thanks, Tim. And again, great question. Thank you, Andy. Tim, again, just conscious of the time here, that hour's gone by very quickly. Outside of the day job, obviously you're vice president here at IOSH, and I just thought I'd take the opportunity while you're with us this evening. And again, thanks ever so much for taking the time out your busy schedule, Tim. We're both involved in an organisation called Safety for Good. You're actually on the leadership team of that. I wonder if you just got a couple of minutes just to tell everyone on the call here a little bit more about Safety for Good and what that's all about.
Yeah, sure, John. So we set Safety for Good is a charity that we set up about 2 years ago. It was a key initiative. It was led by those who know Simon Bliss, who was the former managing director of Principal People, the specialist health and safety recruitment company. And a few of us came together as trustees to set up Safety for Good. And what it is basically it's there to show that we as OHS professionals are there not only to support people in the workplace, but we also want to do good outside of the workplace as well. So, as well as doing, lots of charity stuff and raising money to be able to donate to good causes such as Mind, such as women's charities and others, we also have set up some various systems to be able to support people. So for example, health and safety professionals. We got a mentoring. In fact, I did some mentoring last night with 4 up and coming health and safety professionals. and also donating our time pro bono for perhaps other organisations who need health and safety support but can't afford it, so charities and others. So we're connecting those together as well. So it's something that I'm really proud to be part of. And I hope everybody can, people go and find out a bit more about it. And if it's something you'd like to be involved in, please get involved.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks very much, Tim. So, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you found that a useful discussion. I think we've got through all the questions that have come through on the chat. Sheena, have you seen anything else come through? Or ladies and gents, has anybody got any questions? If so, please do fire them through, or feel free to unmute and ask your question.
There's nothing else I can see on the chat, John.
Okay, that's grand. Thanks so much, Sheena. Tim, was there anything else you wanted to add into the conversation?
No, it's just been great to being able to chat with you, and thanks, John. Yeah, as ever, as you know, we've known each other a long time, and it's great to be able to have a chat with you, and then be able to share, hopefully, a bit of my experience with everyone. But I'm sure everyone else has got their experiences that it'd be good to hear. But if you want, let's connect on LinkedIn and let's follow up the conversations.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks very much, Tim. So, Chris, I think if there's no further questions, I'll hand back to you, your good self, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much, Tim and John. What an amazing insight into the problems you've had to deal with. And a lot of that will be very new to us, although perhaps actually magnified hugely, perhaps from what we've had to deal with work. Certainly the question that you covered to do with PAT testing is a very interesting one, because you could have your work equipment tested at home, but actually the consumer unit that's got all your fuses in isn't up to date. So that actually has an impact on your work equipment, even though your work equipment looks very nice with pristinely cleaned and dusted cables and everything turned on and off as you should have. So even your home equipment is going to affect your work equipment. Very difficult ways to solve some of these problems, but that's why we're health and safety practitioners. Practitioner, I believe, is that term where we use a number of different options to try and solve problems. And it's a wonderful place to be at the minute with events like this, with the wonderful people, and of course yourself, Tim and John, on a global scale, showing something of the sorts of problems you have to deal with, and sharing those tonight. So really appreciate what you've done there. And again, we've got a fantastic selection of high level, high working members in branches, I should say, but of course people that are working in the council, and of course good folks like Jimmy Quinn, who's here to support members. So I think it's particularly a good time to be part of IOSH. I would always encourage people to be part of your local branch. For those people that ask, what do I get for my membership? Really, if you're engaging at this sort of level, you shouldn't really even be raising that question. There's a fantastic amount of information that we can all use. Indeed, as I say, every day is a school day, and we're all learning. We never stop. So on that side, I mean, certainly as far as closing the event goes, at IOSH Staffordshire, we are still working ahead in the background, as well as these virtual events with things like our YouTube channel. So if you haven't gone on there, I mean, it's a bit sad because you see something of how we used to meet in face to face, but there's about 25 different topics covered there in our venue in Beaconside in Stafford, just off junction 14 of the M6. We're hoping to get there as soon as we can, but of course we've got to make sure it's right. On our YouTube channel, as I say, there's 25 odd videos. We're hoping to engage with members more, and certainly with our younger members, that seems to be a portal that is well used for lots of training and engagement. So we're going to utilize that. If perhaps you're a member of another branch and you're interested in being a part of IOSH Staffordshire branch, you can, of course, and you're well within your rights to make contact with IOSH either by email or phone up and ask to be a member of IOSH Staffordshire branch. We'd love to have you along, love to have engagement and to listen to what you've got to say. We're here as the committee for our members, and that's our function, that's our reason for being in the IOSH committee. So really hope that you can engage with us. Next month, I know we've got, well, next month and a number of following months, We're hoping to confirm a lot of details at the minute to do with our following events. And
Yeah,
I don't know whether
I can
John,
do that for next month, Chris. Yeah.
you're able
So-
to help. Thank you.
Yeah, so next month, folks. So again, it's always the third Thursday in the month. So date for your diary, that's the 15th of April. Again, same time, 6 p.m. Following on the theme of meeting global leaders. Obviously, we've got a global leader tonight and also Vice President of IOSH, this time in the banking world. Next month, delighted to welcome Steve Purser. Steve is the Global Safety Director for a supermarket called Tesco. He's also the Product Regulatory Compliance and International Technical Director. So head of safety for the biggest, if not one of the biggest supermarkets in the world. Again, I'll be talking to Steve, same theme as this evening. So again, in conversation with global head of safety for the world's biggest supermarkets, understanding a little bit more about how, again, have you fed the nation during COVID? How do you manage health and safety moving forward? Certainly from Steve's perspective, I'm sure there will be some extra pieces there around the potential impact of Brexit and so forth. So again, that'll be, I'm sure, another fascinating evening talking to another high-profile global leader in the health and safety world. And then May, we've got Darren Sutton, good friend of the branch, who's been with us a number of times before. Darren was with us October, November, I think, last year, Chris.
Yep.
Where again, he'll be talking us through his world-leading insights into behavioural safety and workplace psychology.
That's fantastic. And again, credit to John. John has been instrumental in organising and helping organise our events for the remainder of the year. I know we can't confirm all those dates at the minute, John, can we? But we've certainly got some really big hitting people from the world of health and safety coming.
Yeah, your line's breaking
branch.
up a touch there, Chris, but
Nothing.
you're fading out a touch there, Chris. It might be your signal. But yeah, so certainly all confirmed for April and May, and we've got July with BSI, as I mentioned, talking about ISO 22301. But yeah, watch this space. Plenty more exciting and informative speakers lined up.
You're absolutely right, John. Thank you very much for what you do. Again, supporting our branch, absolutely fantastic. And again, I'm amongst greatness here, delegates and speakers alike. So with that in place, I would really like again to thank Tim for your time. I know it must be extraordinarily busy. When I think I'm busy, I probably don't know the half of it. I'm sure you're extremely busy. So thank you very much for supporting us as our presenter tonight. And of course, as IOSH VP, many thousands of us really look forward to you progressing on your journey. And we're here to support you. Yeah, fantastic for what you're doing and your colleagues. And we look forward to watching your journey really and seeing how you progress. I'm sure again you'll achieve excellence as you go forwards. So thank you very much, Tim, for your time tonight. Thank you, John, indeed for co-hosting and supporting Tim tonight. That's really appreciated. And again to my colleagues in the committee. Again, I'm amongst some amazing people, and it motivates me to do what I do. And indeed, I think we're all like that. We're motivated by amazing people around us. Nobody particularly sticks out. We're all, I think, amazing people. I can't do what I do without an amazing band of people to support me on our journey in IOSH. So thank you very much, everybody, indeed. And with that, I don't think there's any further questions or any points. So we really look forward to seeing you next month. Don't forget, if you forget the event, it's always the third Thursday every single month, starts at 6 p.m. and we make regular communications through LinkedIn and through our microsite as well. So we look forward to seeing you. If you need to or would like to connect, of course, reach out for me, other committee members and other attendees here through LinkedIn. And again, my personal mantra is you never know when you need somebody. So, you know, you keep people very close because, as I say, you never know when you need somebody. Very important to remember that, I think. But thank you very much for your time tonight. Really appreciate it. This recording will be uploaded as soon as we can to our YouTube channel for those that would want to catch up with some of the points from tonight or use it as CPD, or for our members of which perhaps can't be here tonight, they'll be able to catch up through our YouTube channel. So thank you very much, one and all. Really appreciate your time and we look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you again, Tim, John, appreciated. Good night all.
Thanks and good night. Cheers.
Bye, folks.